Anyway, after this, you go to basic flight, which is in Pensacola, right?
Yeah, Pensacola. Then we go to Beeville, Texas when I get jets.
Chase and Kingsville were very close in the number of pilots they produced each year. Chase maybe was 1% higher, but with the same assets. Meridian could only produce 65% of what either Chase or Kingsville produced. More than 1/3 of those on carriers came from Chase Field. And that's pretty profound. This was part of the reason we fought so hard, and we thought we had the right thing to say when they attempted to close, or when they closed Chase.
Our only goal was to save the base, save the base. That became first and foremost in everybody's mind. Because we all realized that, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's about a $60 million annual payroll is what that base provided. And when you factor that into 7 times over, which is what these economists will tell you that money turns over in a community, that's a huge impact on a community this size.
I couldn't go into a store in my civilian clothes. They didn't know me. And they'd spend 20 minutes talking to you and trying to help you in any manner they could.
But when I first moved here, I'd always question why all the little communities around it, Beeville seemed to be the center and why it grew. And everybody say, well, if you look around, we would be the same as a Kennedy or a Karn City as far as population if it hadn't been for the Navy.
The 1980s, the oil crash had occurred. It had been a difficult time for farming, ranching. There were points we thought maybe God didn't want us here. Pestilence was upon us. But we had just gone through in the late 80s, I think 89, we had the McConnell Prison Project, the prison derby. And so we had just secured the prison, and everybody was kind of excited because something was going on in the community. We were going to have some growth. And no sooner had we secured that than it was just a couple of months later they announced they wanted to close Chase Field.
Just the initial announcement was the same as almost closing the base, because everybody were fearful that they weren't going to have long-term employment, the people who worked out there.
So Dudley Brawley, a former mayor, I think called us together, a task force to work on that.
The study, authorized by Vice Admiral S.R. Arthur, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations Logistics, ranked Chase number 4 out of 29 air stations and facilities worldwide and tops among the 3 strike training bases.
We had 2 former Navy captains, Jack Ashmore and Bob Ferguson, who sort of picked up the technical end of it. Then we had a former JAG officer in Jay Kimbrough, who also got involved. And we had this kind of skunk works operation going on where former Navy folks were sending us Navy information, and even current Navy officers who'd been here and knew the community, knew this wonderful relationship that we had. They started getting us the Navy's own information, which showed we were their most proficient base. We had the weather, we had the open skies, we had everything, things that you can't buy or build or add on. Jay took the BRACs, I think there were 7 points that they wanted us to answer. And as an attorney, he turned it around and we answered them with the Navy's own figures.
We put together what I considered one of the best packages that we could put together, and took our information to Washington, D.C. and met with our congressman at the time.
The Navy proposes to close its most productive base, close its most efficient base, close its highest rated base, close its training station with the documentably best flight training weather, inflict the most economic damage possible, inflict the most environmental damage possible, ignore savings from a base loading consolidation in South Texas.
Why isn't it still open? That's a very good question, and I think the question or the answer is politics. To my mind, having gone through that situation, they had already determined that no matter what was presented, that was the base that was going to close.
But I'll never forget the first meeting we had after the closure, that when the federal government came down and those that were involved in base closure gave us the steps that we would have to go through, and they told us that it would take at least 10 years. And we looked at each other and said, you know, these guys haven't dealt with us. We're going to get this thing back on the road in 2 or 3 years. And but almost to the date, it was 10 years.
It took approximately 7 years to acquire title. The Navy, you know, had its processes that you have to go through, and it certainly took a long, long time to get that title. And when companies were interested in Chase Field, you know, the Navy had awarded Chase Field a 1-year lease, and so you would pass that on to the companies, and they would say, well, there's no way that I can do major capital improvements or investments there at Chase Field. Was a 1-year contract. It wasn't until 2005 that we worked out an agreement with K & Associates, a military contractor out of Chicago, who subleased the facility to Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation. The old wood hangar, it's a vintage hangar that's on the National Historical Register. It was the first hangar that was built during World War II. Actually, it was built in 1942, and I believe the war started in 1941. It's an old hangar, and very difficult to maintain, and it's kind of deteriorated at this point. BDA really does not have the amount of money to be able to renovate it. But we do have the last hangar available is what we call VT-26. It's 138,000 square feet. And as we speak, we have 3 companies that are very interested in that hangar that would bring in several hundred jobs.
Joe's invited me out several times, and I just, it's now a prison. We gave them 93% of the buildings when the prison people came in. The beautiful place I knew, the beautiful lawn and landscaping that took place on the base, all of that's gone. And I don't really want to see it the way it is now.